Welcome to the London Commercial Offices podcast with me, your host, Steve Berridge, Managing Director at Fidgens Cost Management. This is a podcast where we share the stories, career paths, lessons and insights from some of the industry's most influential people. Anything contained within our podcast should not be considered professional advice, and if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe or follow buttons to ensure you don't miss any of the amazing guests we've got coming up. It also really helps us grow the show. Thanks. Today we're joined by Vince Simpson, Managing Director at Spark Collective. Spark is a leading real estate consultancy providing strategy, ESG, technology and project services in the commercial real estate sector. Vince has been in the industry for over 20 years, working in both contracting and client-side roles, so brings a unique perspective to our conversations and rants today about the status quo. So, without further ado, Vince, welcome to the show.
Steve, hello. Great to be here. I've listened to a few of your guests, and I'm following some pretty big shoes to fill, to be fair. So this is very exciting. I've got to say, very exciting.
Oh, you'll be fine.
First
podcast, hopefully not
maybe
the last.
The start of a podcasting career. Who knows?
Well, we did talk about this offline about you potentially wanting to launch your own one, for anybody else listening, I recommend it to anybody. It looks daunting, sounds hard to do, but it really isn't. And if anybody actually is interested in launching a podcast, drop me a DM because I'll happily share all about how we do it. And it's nowhere near as intimidating, I think, as some people think it is. So look, you'll know from our previous episodes that we like to start right back at the beginning, or as far back as people would like to go. So how far back are we going today, Vince?
Yeah, well, having listened to a few of your guests, I think I should follow the same format and go right back to the start. And I think it's quite important to do that because if we eventually get to where we are today, for me and everyone else, it all starts right back at the beginning, and where you start forms your outlook on life today. So yeah,
I completely agree.
Okay, so right back at the start, the year was 1979 in Dundee, east coast of Scotland. So I was effectively an 80s kid, which growing up in Scotland and many other places across the UK, of course, but certainly in Dundee at the time, it was quite I'll say a humble, if I'm being honest, probably sometimes poor upbringing in Scotland. And it was purely through circumstance and just the situation at the time with how the country was run, benefits, work opportunity, etc., etc. So quite a humble, poor upbringing, single parent upbringing, single mum, doing her best as everyone did at the time. But yeah, there was times that were quite low, shall we say. Not to start off on a sob story by any stretch, but
no, but I think it's good to know that know the background and know the starting point, as I'm sure it will have had an influence on things that have happened in later life.
Yeah, it really did, and there was times when we really relied on benefits, and if I'm being very frank with you now, times we relied on food parcels and Salvation Army, things like that. Not terrible, not all the time, but there was some tough times growing up. And in Scotland, certainly in my family and other places, I'm sure, because this is not unique by any stretch. Growing up was kind of in the 80s was like get on with stuff. You just
get on with it.
You just get on with life. You do up, down, left, right. You just keep moving forward and you get on with stuff. So that was kind of my younger years as a young kind of lad. I then started to grow up a little bit, and again, because of lack of opportunity, and I was not academic in any way, shape or form. I'm arguably still not academic, to be fair. But there was, I wasn't really into school, and they weren't really.
As in, it just wasn't for you.
It just wasn't for me, and unless you were in the top kind of 10% of, let's call it the teachers' pets, and I mean that in a nice way to those people, you weren't really encouraged at school. You just weren't, which is a shame, and probably still the case today. But anyway, so I wasn't really into school, which led me down or close to a path which could have gone a very different way. I started to get in with some of the wrong crowds. Nothing too drastic, but the older you get, I could have definitely ended
a fork in the road.
Yeah, 100%. I joined the Cubs, the Scouts, done all that kind of good stuff. But then it was one day I was taken to the Army Cadets. I think I must have been about 11 and a half, maybe.
I think I did the Air Cadets rather than the Army.
And you'll remember it was great times as a young lad or girl. And it was at that point I walked into the cadets on the first night and just loved it. I just fell in love with it, the whole thing. People that I hadn't even known were structured. There was discipline. I got handed a rifle on the first night and taught how to take it apart and put it back together. I was marching up and down the drill hole, and I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And I don't think that people will know this, but there was 3 specific people, and I wouldn't mind kind of thanking them if that's all right.
Listen, it's your show.
Yeah, there's a guy called Craig Petrie, Andy Stevens, and Grant Dixon, who, bless us, isn't with us anymore. But those 3 guys turned what could have been a pretty rowdy boy into a half-decent teenager. And I don't think they even know what the difference they made themselves.
And do you think that was kind of, if you don't mind me talking like this, in terms of a father figure role that you didn't have? Was that the kind of the void that they were helping fill?
Probably a bit, yeah. My uncle played a big part in being that father figure. Big part. I mean, he bought me my first bike. He gave me my first pint. He done the right thing.
The first legal pint.
Yeah, first legal pint. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, he did sneak me the odd car under the Christmas table, but maybe I'm sharing too much there. But yeah, those guys were absolutely the men in my life that taught me a hell of a lot. Taught me a lot. And it was at that point I got structure, I got discipline. There was goals to attain. You went away, you done courses, you had tests, exams, you got badges, and you were just surrounded by great people and great mates. And yeah, it really shaped me. But the flip side of that was I knew at that point I was going to join the army. So I gave even less time to school and exams and all that kind of stuff. But it worked out. I didn't leave too bad, actually. I got 3s and 4s, which is Scottish for C's and D's, because we like to do things differently. And anyway, as soon as I could, I joined the army. And I was fortunate enough to get a placement in the Royal Engineers. So soldier first, Royal Engineer second. But very early, I mean, I never even had a paper round in Scotland.
So how old were you then at that point?
So I enlisted at 15 3/4. I remember it vividly.
So you're still a child, really.
Still a boy.
Yeah.
I'd never even had a paper round and anything like that. Yeah, going into the army careers for a few tests and, pull-ups and aptitude tests and all that kind of stuff. And the computer spits out what you can do, basically. And I wanted to join the Paras or the Black Watch because I was in the Black Watch Cadets, and it's just what I love. But they said, no, you're not doing that. You're going to be a Royal Engineer electrician. So that was cool. I then fast forward to the following January when January it was, get on a train to Farnborough, get off the train at Farnborough, and I started my basic training as a boy soldier, or an apprentice as they called it at the time. So I got off that train as a young teenager, and 7 months later I was a young man. You learn damn quickly. Many, many things through that training. But I absolutely loved it. Got through all of that, but you kind of come back from leave or out of that as a very different person. You're now a young man at that point.
And were you going back to Dundee on leave?
I went back once throughout that time, and then after that you get in with your army career, and I still only really go back once a year, much to my mum's dismay. She keeps telling me off. But yeah, it's home, but it's not been home for a long time. I mean, I've been away from Dundee longer than I was ever in Dundee now. So yeah, anyway. So yeah, I kind of got into the army. That was my routine, my life for almost 10 years. And being not only a soldier, but being a Royal Engineer, and I would say this because I'm an ex-RE, but it's quite an important role to play. And
I mean, for those that don't know anything about the army, could you just give us a brief?
Yeah, so the army is made up of various different parts and divisions, etc. The infantry being probably what everyone thinks the army is, but there's so much more to it that support the army. The Royal Engineers is a figurehead and a spearhead in all of that, in terms of mobilisations, building infrastructure, clearing minefields, bomb disposal, bridging, all of that kind of stuff is the backbone of what I would call how an army moves. And does what it does, yeah. And you do some crazy shit. You see some crazy things, and you also see some not very nice things, and do some not very nice things. And as a young boy, I mean, I'm still only, 16, 17 at this point. To do 10 years of that, it forms who you are. It really, really does. And you're still a young guy at this point. I still am. Doing various deployments, exercises, tours. I'm not going to, for a second, detract from any of my forces colleagues that went to Iraq or Afghanistan. I didn't do those. They've got very different stories to tell, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of in between those two, which was more your Bosnia and Kosovo kind of tours. I've done some time in Sierra Leone and Africa, as well as exercises all over the place. But the long and short of all of that is that you get a very different life experience and work ethic and leadership out of that time. And not everyone can relate to that sometimes, being honest.
I completely agree. I mean, I can't relate to that. My formative years were, mucking around with friends back home, off to uni, freshers week, relatively privileged. And I think it's two completely different paths and two completely different, formative stages of life.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't want to be cliche, but people think, the army break you to build you back up. But it's very true. Very, very true. And
How so?
And they kind of need to. And certainly in the era that I was in, which is very different to the era that today's forces are in, the methods of encouragement and teaching and discipline specific, shall we say,
A different generation to where we are now.
Definitely. And my generation was different to the generation before me. So it all kind of goes through a curve. But yeah, when you're forced to grow up quick, you do.
So 9 years, 10 years?
So just short of 10 years. I was lucky enough to kind of go full circle to my last job in the Army was actually as a recruit instructor. So I ended back where I started, but I was teaching the recruits this time how to defuse landmines and build bridges and play with explosives and all that kind of good stuff. But a critical role, because at that point, a lot of the recruits that were coming through the training regiments were actually going to Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever conflict was kind of the premier at the time. So, a really critical role of teaching young people how to do their job. And these guys are boys, they are boys. So a lot of responsibility on that as well. I was then lucky enough for a few months to actually teach the instructors. So any of my mates listening to this will laugh, but the instructor training is kind of like the Top Gun of being an instructor. It's you're teaching the instructors how to teach, and I've done a few months of that. But actually, that's when I kind of got military fatigue at that point, and thought, right, I'm young enough to start a new career. If I was, what would I do? And then that's what kickstarted my transition out of the forces. Yeah.
So at that point in time, did you know what or where you were going to be going to? A sector?
No.
It was really just you'd had enough where you were and you wanted to change.
Yeah, I've kind of got that mindset where I think about things a hell of a lot, and then when I've decided, I just go for it. So I handed my notice in, and it was a year's notice in the Army at the time, and a year is a long time,
especially once mentally you've checked out.
Yeah,
as such.
Absolutely. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something in management, but equally, I was applying to join the police. I was applying to become a train driver because I heard they earn good money. There was no They still do. I wouldn't say there was loads of direction in my logic, to be fair. But the Army support you with some courses. It's not quite all it's cracked up to be. But I ended up doing health and safety and project management courses. And then I kind of got wind of project management and thought, that sounds pretty cool. Because I'd done some great projects in the Army. And I was kind of a bit of a site manager in the Army and managing projects of various natures. So I thought, okay, well, let's do a bit of that. But I didn't really know how to get into that in what we called at the time Civvy Street, how to get into it. And I was lucky enough to be go back a step. I was applying for jobs on my Sony Ericsson which I was using as a modem, because this is before broadband and internet was really, mainstream.
We're talking sort of 2004 sort of time, aren't we?
Well, yeah, we are. Yeah, in my dorm, using my Sony Ericsson on a kind of wireless link, applying for jobs, which was absolutely tedious and tiresome. But anyway, I managed to get a bit of interest. But I was lucky enough to secure a role at a company called Asta Development, which anyone in construction will know that they do the planning software. So I was lucky enough to be released 6 months early because I got a job. I got my first company car, my first company laptop, my mobile phone. I thought I was the bee's knees. And I was teaching courses, how to plan construction projects and use the software, etc., etc.
So was this teaching project management firms how to use the software?
Yeah, I'm straight out of the army for 5 minutes, right? And I'm teaching senior people and their teams how to manage their construction projects. Talk about imposter syndrome, right? There was a good bit of that. But it was actually really, really great because I learned how civvy life works. One of the biggest things I'll always remember is the transition of simple things like finding a doctor, paying council tax. The military sense of humour doesn't always land correctly in civvy street, shall we say. So there was a lot of learning there. That was the first year of me kind of transitioning out. But it was fine.
And what part of the country were you in for that?
I was in Oxfordshire.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was really fortunate with that role because I was learning stuff, both civvy life and construction and planning and programming and all that. But also I was meeting some great people, touring around the UK and Ireland, talking to construction firms and consultancies and clients and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't subtle. I kind of got wind of, this is how it all works. I was not subtle at all. There was, in the coffee breaks, I was always quite, how do you get into what you do then? I wasn't...
Fact-finding kind of...
Yeah, yeah. It's in hindsight, I was probably a bit too blunt about it. But anyway, I had a few bites, and my career there was another fork in the road at that point, which I'm really, in retrospect, glad I took the right one. There was an opportunity with HBG, as they were at the time, which is now BAM, I think. Was it BAM and HBG? Anyway, whichever way around that was. And Como Interiors, which is now Mace Interiors. So I could have been building supermarkets or industrial estates, but thankfully I ended up at Como in fit out.
Great part of the world. I have fond memories of Como.
Indeed. So I was lucky enough to get an opportunity there as an assistant construction superintendent, which was the fancy way of saying an assistant site manager, I guess, at that time. And it was, again, I had a great couple of years there, and I've got to kind of shout out to a couple of people that really made that happen. Because I was a guy that had been out of the army maybe only 9 months at that point, overkeen, didn't really know how the real world worked properly, if I'm honest. But there was a gentleman called James Gall, who's now got his own contracting firm, doing very well. John Morris, Damien Kenny, and then later on Steve Root. Those were the core Como guys that just seen something in me and gave me every opportunity to make the most of it. Gave me lots of responsibility, lots of ownership, sent me to college and uni, sponsored me, and frankly made the basis of my fit-out career, yeah.
I'm trying to work out whether our paths would have crossed, because I think I was 06 to 09 at uni, 010 or 10 started at DL, and we're working in fit out and was working with Como.
Yeah, I've got no doubt they probably would have crossed at some point. Yeah, definitely. I remember, funny enough, just a little anecdote. Steve Root was keen to develop the next generation of the company, so he'd done all these road shows where he would take just a couple of juniors with him to go to DL, your office, other people's offices, and just have a chat, basically. And I'm sat there as a young green kind of guy talking against senior people that know what they're doing. But yeah, he really embraced that. It was a great time, really great time. Done some brilliant projects. I always kind of got the harder projects for some reason, which I kind of take somewhere along the line as a bit of a compliment. My second project ever, actually, I was leading myself. and it was.
I think that's the beauty of fit out, because it's very similar on, and it might just be me, but on the consulting side, it's kind of, because there's quite niche contained projects, it's kind of, there you go. It's not a hospital out in the regions. It's one floor in a building, and you kind of, I said it before, sink or swim, and it's sink or swim in a supported way.
Yeah,
but
very much so.
There you go, which Definitely. I think is a great way to start.
Yeah, 100%. And you'll know yourself, you get baptism, or you earn your spurs and you've got to do a toilet fit out. So I
remember my first one, Swift Horseman.
Okay, right, yeah.
Swift Horseman, full block for Deutsche Bank.
Wow. Yeah. So my second project at Como was ExxonMobil's 6 or 7 floors of WEC refurbishment phased in occupation, and Mace were the project managers. And Mace and Como had a little bit of a kind of love-hate relationship at that time. So yeah, it was exciting. It was very exciting. And then towards the end of my time at Como, I was lucky enough to work under a chap called Dave Howe, who I absolutely just cannot say enough good things about that guy in terms of a project director or project leader. I was working under him at BlackRock, which was at the time one of the biggest projects in London, and I learned a hell of a lot from that chap as well, and had a lot of responsibility in BlackRock as well. Yeah, but it was that point where I was starting to kind of understand my career paths. I was at college and uni again, part time as well. And I've got to say, I was that guy that was tempted away by a few extra pounds, because it mattered it always matters. But I was thinking, do I buy my first house? What do I do? And every pound and penny counted. But those guys were great. Steve and Dave were especially brilliant. They could have threw an extra couple of quid at me. They could have. But actually, and they did try to. But equally, they knew that I needed to get more experience and a more rounded experience somewhere else. Very smart guys. So I'd like to say reluctantly let me go, but maybe they would say different. I'm not sure. But yeah, so then I went from there to BW. Spent a bit of time at BW, again doing great projects, but let's just say it was the old BW. It's not the BW of today, which is very different. And then at that point, I was a little bit of, not a troubleshooter, but again, some tricky projects, kind of go and sort this out and done so. But then from there, I went to Structuretone, which was another whole different experience again. And there I was a bit of a troubleshooter. I'd done a major project for Latham's in Bishopsgate, so I was one of the lead PMs, if not the lead PM on that, under a project director, but took a front role. And then from that, I then was a bit of a troubleshooter and helped other teams kind of get their projects across the line, and so on and so forth. And at that point, I was kind of coming to the end of my studies, so I was again at uni part-time, and I was doing a project with Cushman's for Willis, Towers Watson, or it's now Willis Towers Watson, up in Ipswich. And I got chatting to the project manager, and I was kind of
so client. This was you were Structuretone.
I was the contracts manager or senior PM, kind of roving around. So it's funny because I got into roving roles quite quickly.
Looking after multiple sites.
Yeah, I got to that pretty quickly, and I was up in Ipswich looking after one up there, and the Cushman's PM, me and him got on pretty well, and I was kind of finishing my degree in construction management, thinking, right, actually, I want to do this. I want to put this to some good use. So I had a chat with him, and he went, "Why don't you come in? Let's talk." So I did, and that was my transition into Cushman's in my consultancy role. And a weird story, but phase 1 of that project, I was the Structuretone project manager. Phase 2 of that project, I was the client PM, managing Structuretone. And which didn't go down too well in certain places with certain people, but that's how it worked out.
What was it, do you think, that you were looking for? As in, because I imagine you were earning good money at Structuretone, getting to do good work. What do you think what was missing? Because it happens a lot. Everybody wants to go client side. It's kind of this, even on our side of the fence, the professional team, they have this client side role vision where they want to get to, and often the grass isn't greener. But if you could think back at that point in time, what were you looking for that you didn't get from the contracting world?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I wanted to understand the client's real needs, not what we get in a tender as a contractor. That is not the nuts and bolts construction bit, because if it's set up right, it kind of manages itself in certain respects. It does. I want to understand more of the bigger picture aspects, the strategy, the real estate. Why does a client spend millions on a project? What's it all about? So I guess that's my way of saying it. I wanted to look upstream rather than downstream, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. And I wanted to be that client PM who generally, at that point in time at least, kind of sat at the end of the table. Some of them didn't say very much, but when they did open their mouth, it was important, and everyone listened. And they were generally right about most things, not everything, but most things. And I thought, right, I want to be a bit of that guy. And I was studying it. I was doing the theory. I wanted to put it in practice. So Cushman's was a fantastic business. That's where I cut my teeth as a consultant. I had a bit of a bumpy start. I did, because shaking off your contractor mindset and hat and expertise and everything that wasn't easy to start with. I rocked a few boats, some contractors. I make those kinks were ironed out pretty quickly, and that was my consultancy.
The start of your consulting career. So that was 2014, sort of 2014.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, it's all a bit of a blur, to be honest. 20 years.
Well, people often say, the nice thing about doing the podcast in this format is it forces you to take a step back and kind of rerun your path. And it's not often that you'd sit and do that.
No.
We're so busy day to day.
Absolutely. I had to print off my LinkedIn things just to keep
I've got it up in front of me. I don't just know these years off the top of my head. I've got the prompts.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, so with 2014, we're an associate PM at Cushman's, and we're there for, I think, nearly 4 years.
Yeah.
In terms of then your progression within Cushman's, the roles that you were doing, your experience, do you just want to talk about that? And that will kind of lead up nicely to you leaving Cushman's to go on to your next gig.
Sure. It's funny because my time at Cushman's was there was almost two separate lives at Cushman's. There was the life where I had to be the lead project manager and client leads and deal with all the normal day-to-day stuff. But parallel to that, I was learning a lot. You can't just go from contracts manager at a contractor to project manager consultancy overnight and expect to get it all right. You just can't. But you need to look like you do. But I was supported heavily. Some great people around me. But I was doing a lot of learning in the background. That's where I done my APC as well, which for me was a real kind of milestone. Didn't mention this at the start, but I'm mildly dyslexic, and to finish my degree was a big deal, to be fair. And I was doing my masters at the time as well. I had a lot going on, but to get my APC was quite a big deal for me. But again, great experiences, great projects, and that's really where I learned property as well. Because you can work in a project management firm, and there's plenty of them out there that are not linked to property firms, which is great and fine. But being in a global property firm is a different experience, and you learn a very different approach to everything to do with the transaction and how it gets to project and design and all of that. You learn a hell of a lot, and that's a great foundation that I want to tap into more.
Yeah, the exposure to the wider ecosystem.
Definitely.
How projects actually happen.
Yeah,
before they hit site.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you'll know this yourself. The hardest, longest, most energetic work is all pre-contract, right?
Well, it should be because if it's done right,
it should be. Absolutely.
It makes for an easier ride post-contract.
It should be, yeah. And it was a whole ton of exposure that I never got as a contractor, but that's why I made the jump, as I said, because I wanted to get into all of that. So yeah, that was my Cushman's days. When I was there just towards the end as the Cushman's DTZ merger happened. So again, I'd never been through that before. That was an experience as well. So yeah, lots of great varied experiences from that. Yeah.
And was it as a result of that merger that you were looking to move elsewhere, or was there other factors?
No, there was other factors. I kind of felt like I'd kind of become a consultant at that point. And
that imposter syndrome had slightly reduced.
Yeah.
And been replaced with experience.
Yeah, exactly that. And I took quite a unique approach to my projects, which I'm sure we'll come on to later on. But I've got quite a unique outlook on life. Again, it's all because of my background and my life experience. And everyone's got different backgrounds and different life experiences. But I'm certainly a non-cog from a military and contracting background to where I've ended up. So quite, I'd like to think, unique in certain respects. And it was because of that outlook that I thought, right, there's a bigger, badder world out there. Let's give something else a go. And I've got to say, I wasn't actively looking per se, but when you've got a half decent role like that, people look you up and check you out and come and have that coffee. So I did, and that's what took me to CBRE. And the thing that attracted me with that role was they really thought about the role and who they wanted. And I must have had half a dozen coffees, a lunch, 3 interviews. It's quite a big deal.
Intense.
Yeah. They really know what they're doing. But it was to lead a team, like formally lead a team. I was leading teams all through my career to that point, but this was a formal head of a position. And I thought that's something I can really kind of get my teeth into. Yeah, for me, it was just a great opportunity. Yeah.
And that was in 2017.
If you say so. Yeah.
Yeah,
that looks right. Yep.
Well, that's what LinkedIn tells me. So so that was jumping over to CBRE in their fit out.
Correct.
Free team.
And CBRE's got two, or they did at the time at least, have two distinct kind of parts of the business. There was the GWS part, and then there was the advisory part. And this was a role in the fit out or the advisory fit out team. Yeah, London focused. And I was brought in to. I'm going to say this in the nicest possible way. Kind of restart the design and build team, because there was a design and build team, but the guys that run that went off and done their own thing, and it was kind of there, but no one was really leading it. So I was brought in to grab hold of that and focus purely on design and build consultancy, not the actual build.
Just going to say, yeah, focusing on design and build projects as such.
Exactly, yeah, correct, yeah. And I inherited a team who were just absolutely fantastic, and I grew that team by one as well. So there's only 4 of us. It was a nimble team, but with quite a lot of reach in the market. And yeah, man, we smashed it. We just smashed it for 4 years. It was absolutely brilliant. We just got on and gelled really quickly, really well, and it was a fantastic a few years for me. Really brilliant.
And what sort of projects were you doing during that time? Was it lots of small, lean and mean D&Bs, or was there chunky ones?
Bit of both. Mostly, I say small. I mean, there was this kind of not hard and fast, but a 30,000 square feet ish kind of line. Mm-hmm. Anything below that tended to be D&B at that point in the market, and those kind of clients wanted that. But we were very much on the, let's call it, the faster track of delivery. There was other teams that were on the 100,000, 200,000 square feet projects going for years. So yeah, that's what our speciality was. We worked closely with our agent teams and our internal stakeholders, as is the case with property firms. I will say it's not what people think. You get handed every single opportunity. You do not. You've still got to work for them. You still have to tender some of them, and not all of them come internal. Some of them go pure D&B, straight to D&B firms. So again, that was another kind of learning curve as well. Yeah, and as I'm sure it's no secret, CBRE like to grow, expand, acquire, all that kind of good stuff, and all of that was happening while COVID happened, obviously. And I always had this little niggle, where's my career going to end up? And I'm a senior guy. I'm a senior director now at this point in CBRE. It was a little bit of a celebrity role in the industry. Head of D&B at CBRE. That's a nice
the kudos that went along with that. People know who you are.
100%. Mm-hmm. Which was great. But talk about imposter syndrome again. No one would ever know this, but I had it every single day at CBRE, every single day. My one comfort blanket was the team around me, who were absolutely brilliant and mostly got me, understood me. Again, not coming from a typical building surveying background, to be a team leader and a project leader in my way, they got it, which was brilliant. But both at Cushman's and at CBRE, I tried with agents, and I'd done okay, but it's not natural to me to kind of find that rapport with them all the time. And again, not to hark back to my sob story at the start, but I come from a very specific background and a specific upbringing, and yeah, that was a bit tough for me at times. So that's where the imposter syndrome piece really played a part. COVID happened. I thought, right, do I stay and become a career man? And when you're in the big corporates, I'd be surprised if not everyone kind of has that crossroads moment. Am I here for life? The next promotion, the next title, the next head of.
And you can map that your remaining 25 years, or you can draw it.
Yeah.
With relative accuracy.
Yeah, you still got to earn it all. It's not all a given. You've got to earn it all and do the right things. But do you take that path, or do you scratch a niche that you've had? And I've always, in maybe the second half of my career, I've kind of thought, right, what about doing something myself, trusting my own abilities and my own outlook and my own expertise? COVID made everyone think. I was sat at the breakfast bar thinking, right, what do I do if I was to do this? And again, I made my decision there and then on the spot, and that was it. I was committed to it. So I made the decision to hand my notice in. And I've got to say, I could have been there for a whole long, great career. But even then, the CBRE, TNT merger, acquisition, whatever they want to call it, it kind of just got me thinking, where does this business go, and where am I in this business? Where's everyone in this business? So that was the kind of icing on the cake for me. And at that point, I got a little bit of corporate fatigue and thought, right, now's the time. If you're going to start a business, you do it in a recession, you do it in some kind of downturn, you do it sadly in some kind of bad thing. And that was what happened, yeah.
That was your catalyst. So did you leave and set up Spark during COVID, or had that kind of passed?
It was the back end of COVID, so I think we were just out of the second lockdown or whatever it was. But I had a 6-month notice period, so I handed my notice in, done the 6 months, which was predominantly at home, most of it, and then just starting to come back to the office towards the end of it. But in that 6 months, I was managing projects, still doing my day job as a team leader and senior director. But I've got to say, the guys, my leadership at the time, Jason, Kerr especially,
I know Jason very well.
Alan and Richard Morris, are really supportive.
I was talking to someone else in the industry, must have been 3 or 4 weeks ago, who was contemplating the same thing at an established practice, very good at what they do, wants to go and do their own thing, and was leaving accordingly. And I remember this when I left Core 5. It's almost the biggest compliment you can give to your previous company that you've nurtured me and grown me to a position and a point in my career where I feel confident enough that I want to go and do it on my own.
Yeah.
And I always say, why would anybody have a problem with that? Why would they want to retain talent that isn't 100% invested in their business?
Sure.
Once you've got the idea, it's planted. You're going to do it at some point in time. Yeah. So why not encourage that person, give that person all the support they can? Exactly. But it doesn't always happen like that.
No, it doesn't, sadly. But it did in this case, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunity and the time and energy that I got from CBRE, and how they let me kind of move on. Yeah, it was brilliant. And I still bump into all these people, at events and all that kind of stuff.
It's such a small market.
Yeah,
I mean,
it really is.
Construction in itself, let alone London commercial workplace. It's it's one big family. So what would be interesting in terms of, so you're sitting at home in COVID, frantically coming up with a business plan for what you don't like, what you do like, what you're hoping to set up. Could you talk us through silly things like where the name came from. What was it that you were trying or had the idea to build, and what pain points you were trying to scratch, versus how that's actually evolved in real life, and where you are now compared to where you kind of thought you were going to be and what you're going to be launching, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny you talk about the business plan. I'm in my study now, and my business plan is still down there, which was an A0 flip chart with loads of scribbles and highlighters all over it. So to kind of get to the root of your question, there was loads of ideas going through my head. What am I? What could a brand be? How do I compete? What's the name going to be? And I toyed with loads and loads of ideas. I had no idea what I was going to do. I'm probably now a month into my notice period, no idea at this point. And then I thought, right, let's flip it. If I was to improve our already great industry and improve the world of consultancy, how would I go about that? And not to kind of turn it into a negative, but I thought, well, what's kind of missing? What would I do differently? And I kind of felt, certainly at that time, and maybe it was the legacy COVID's kind of doldrums, maybe it was a bit of my only real comparison in consultancy was Cushman's and CBRE, where the massive growth kind of focused and, dare I say, and it's not a bad thing, revenue focused and fee focused, to actually getting back to basics and just really honing in on what I enjoy doing, which was delivering projects. So I kind of felt at that point there was a lack of direction, momentum, and energy. There was a lack of a few things, but those three words kind of stood out to me. Direction, giving clients that real strategic, focused advice that's based on expertise. A path for a project, if you will, not vagarities and covering your arse and all that kind of stuff. Let's give some real direction behind the advice that we give. Momentum was about keeping things moving. I don't think I'd be talking out of turn if I said that some people, some organisations are more problem focused and solution focused, and the brakes can go on quite often, and they'll hide behind
Process
or some kind of vague thing. And momentum comes about with doing the right thing, safely, legally, proper, shall we say. But you can always keep things moving. Always try and find a way around an obstacle or over it or under it, rather than just look at it. So that's where the momentum thing came from. And then the energy piece was more about bringing a bit more of me, my experience, and my personality to how we go about things. Not to say it by any stretch I couldn't have done that at CBRE, but you're in a very different environment.
There's yes, you're allowed to have a personality, and this isn't CBRE. This is any big corporate. Of course, you can have a personality, but that's still a personality within a corporate personality of the wider business.
Absolutely.
And I'm the same. I don't fit in to a big corporate beast. That's not me. I'm far more outspoken, nimble. Momentum. All the things that you're saying. I can relate with. Yeah.
And then the energy piece was again me, but also that innovation and actually joining the dots together. And I've got to say, and again, I don't mean this in a derogatory way by any stretch, but a big part of my role at CBRE was to go out, win the work, both internally and externally. I was better at the external stuff, if I'm being honest. But you get to a point where I had quite a bit of a speech, I guess, down, and it worked. And not many people ever get sacked for appointing CBRE. It's true, they don't. But it almost becomes just that little bit easy. And was I believe in my own words? And I kind of wasn't just at that point a little bit. So again, that's where the energy piece came into it a little bit. I actually wanted to just think about things in a different way and give a different energy to a project or a problem or a solution for that particular client. So direction, momentum, and energy jump out at me on this page of 30 odd words. And then I thought, right, well, what's got direction, momentum, and energy? And I thought about a few things. And then Spark came to mind. And I thought, that seems too obvious. Why is there not a Spark?
Can I get the domain?
Straight on the internet, bought every domain I can think of, checked Companies House, done all of that. And that's how Spark PM was born. But I still didn't have any clients at that time. I was then going to get in the throes of building a website, etc. But then I thought, right, what happens if? So then I thought, what else can I do? So I also started Spark Academy pretty much at the same time, which was my kind of fallback of doing a bit of coaching, bit of mentorship, APC stuff. More of an experiment than anything else, if I'm honest.
And do you think that was as a comfort blanket because you didn't necessarily have complete faith that Spark PM was going to be a success? It was kind of, balancing the odds almost.
Yeah, 100%. It absolutely was. Look, Spark PM worked when I was kind of transitioning out from the last few months of CBRE. I was lucky enough to have some clients that got in touch from previous lives, not across my whole career. But right back to when I was a contractor at Cushman's, just people you're connected with and keep in touch with. So thankfully, yeah, we got off on a good foot with Spark PM, and that was kind of the first 2 maybe 3 years.
So did you find then that was obviously still fit out focused, mainly in London, and was there still a focus on D&B? Was that the kind of the stuff that you ended up with? What kind of what work were you doing?
Very diverse. Rightly or wrongly, I was kind of, the market kind of thought I was a D&B guy just because of my last job, but actually most of my time was trad projects, both contractor and at Cushman's. So I'm not a D&B guy per se, but it was a mixture of everything. One of my first projects was a Cat B refurbishment in situ for a client I'd worked with previous, which was just a fantastic project to run that between Washington, London, and my spare bedroom in Colchester. So that I'd done more work for Willis up in Ipswich. Went up there, done chiller replacements on a one-way system, watching chillers get moved at 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I'm up there because that's what my client needed. And loads of stuff in between. R&D lab in Cambridge. Yeah, just a real mixture. Yeah. And I really like that. I am a fit out guy, but I like a problem to solve. And the more obscure, bizarre, and challenges with a project, the more I've got something to get my teeth into. I mean this with utmost respect to my peers and my colleagues, but if you're given a white box in the middle of London with loads of time and loads of money for a huge client, brilliant. We'd all love that. But given
we do all love it, but it's very hard to get excited about it. And I've said this, I was talking to my wife about it last year, finding purpose in what you do. And it was, okay, it's another Cat B fit out for another wealthy client in another nice, prestigious building in London. And that can become monotonous is the wrong word, but they blend into each other because they're all very similar. And you want something unique. You want a challenge, whether that's a cost challenge or a program challenge or a relationship challenge.
Exactly.
Something where you can demonstrate your unique ability to add value almost. So you're not, to get away from that commodity driven service.
Definitely. And I think this is why I wanted to start right back at the beginning and my upbringing and the soldier engineer aspects are really important because the direction, momentum, and energy also come from my military outlook as well. And while I've been out the army, 20 odd years, whatever it is, you don't lose it.
Well, that was your formative years.
100%. So if you kind of think about what does the military do, and I'm not going to say I agree anymore with what the military does, okay, just putting that out there, but direction, momentum, and energy are a big part of a force, any kind of force. So that's always kind of at the back of my mind as well. What would soldier Vince do? And I actually do approach many problems like that. What would we do to get around that if we had to? How do we improvise? How do we? And one big thing I've got a real thing about is avoiding the problems in the first place. And that's a real, I'm going to say military thing. It's not just a military thing, but some people and organisations kind of deal with what's right in front of them at that point in time. I think way out in advance of that, given my experience and
you hit the word on that. It's experience. It's having done projects similar many times before that you're able to see what could be on the horizon. But that's what project management should be. That's what cost management should be. What I find nowadays and it is a rant, it is a moan, is that we're working with very, very junior co-professionals, very, very young project managers that are fantastic at day-to-day process-driven project management, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they don't have that experience or breadth of knowledge to foresee risks that could arise and can there steer the ship accordingly.
Yeah.
And that's, I think a problem that everybody would agree exists.
Couldn't agree more. And it's because of that experience and my non-cog route, if you like, that makes me stand out a little bit. This is quite good. This is a little bit of therapy for me, Steve. If
I charge £250 an hour for this.
I'm sometimes misunderstood. I take a certain approach sometimes to projects. Some people raise their eyebrows at, or they don't like it.
Can you give me an example?
It's one example, because I just done it this morning, was going through a PC checklist. Right, something pretty standard. Every project manager's got one up their sleeve somewhere. All right, but what we actually do is we issue the PC checklist at the very start of the project. A, because it goes in the contract, but B, we remind the team and we guide the team through it at regular intervals that we are actually going to go through this, and here's why it's important. And we do a dry run, 1 to 2 weeks before a section or a PC. This isn't rocket science, right? But the way it lands is, well, A, we've got a checklist, and B, it's not PC yet. Why are we doing this? It's because we're going to rehearse it. We're going to go through it. It's going to be no surprise on the day. We want that PC to be a formality and high five and go to the pub. That's what we all want. But the only way we get there is if we think about it in advance. Yeah. So that's just one example from this morning, which again isn't groundbreaking. It's really not.
It's not, but you know what? It doesn't happen on the projects I'm on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
yes. I do see PC checklists, and actually, we're on a lot of projects as cost consultants where there aren't even PC checklists, and this goes back to there are varying degrees of project management out in the market, particularly in the fit out market.
Yeah.
Some extremely process driven, and then at one end, and then on the other end of the scale, completely unprocess driven.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a balance to be had between those two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But it's
totally agree.
Yeah.
And kind of darting around a little bit here, but come back to join that point with your previous one about experience. I mean, the industry's changed massively for me over the last 20 years, and you as well. And there's my seniors that have been 30, 40 years, right? It's changed, more for that. But when I first started out, the client, I'll say that in speech marks for those that are listening, was usually a middle-aged guy in a suit with grey hair, right? Generally speaking. Now the client is anyone and everyone. It's a 25-year-old who's got a startup and they're in black holey jeans and a hoodie. Totally cool. You've got managing directors of D&B firms that are 30 years old, right? And everything in between. Now, good, bad, indifferent, whatever that may be, that's the industry we're in. It's different. But you've got to I certainly think, oh, what does that mean for experience? And what's the trajectory of that? Don't even get us started on AI, right? I mean, what's the trajectory for experience and people that really know how to deal with situations out there? What does that look like? That's a podcast for another day, perhaps. But bringing all that back to our outlook, the whole DME thing, or hashtag DME, as we like to say, direction, momentum, and energy.
I'll have to remember that when I post this.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We like to be different. We like to be real. We don't spread ourselves too thin. We really focus on our clients and advice. And I've got a real thing about thinking bigger picture. The nuts and bolts, project management stuff, yes, it's out there. But frankly, it's saturated.
What are we trying to achieve?
What's the goal? So even for Spark, not every client gets this, but we try and set a project goal at the start. What is the overall goal? What's the mantra for the project?
How do you guide future decisions? Without knowing the framework for 100%, success?
100%. 100%. So that's kind of our approach to things. But when it comes to as I said, I'm sometimes misunderstood. And it's because I like to kind of set the stall out at the start. Now, everyone loves to talk about collaboration. Everyone wants everyone to get on perfectly all through a project and happy smiley faces all through the project. I want that as well. I do. But I think if you're going to embark on throwing a load of people together, some of which have never worked together before, right? And if we're, in the majority of cases, sad as it may seem, there's not been enough thought up front about strategy, you've usually not got enough money or not enough time to actually do what's needed, right, in real terms.
That is most of the projects we're involved with.
It's certainly been most of my projects, yeah.
Whilst you bring it up, and it comes back to purpose again. We talked about, lots of nice projects in nice buildings with lots of money and kind of feeling like it's difficult to really stand out and add unique value in those circumstances. Definitely. My issue is, and it's kind of the bit that I've got between my teeth, certainly for the foreseeable future, is I see it time and time again. We're appointed as cost consultants quite late in the process. You guys, PM, might be slightly ahead of us, but what we see is the most experienced person within a client's business that kind of has it on their shoulders to manage the offices. Now that could be, if it was a smaller company, a secretary that's kind of role has evolved into an office manager that's evolved into a quasi facilities manager. Absolutely. And is now setting the budget for a 2 million, 5 million, 10 million pound office fit move because they know they're going to be moving in 2 years' time, based on nothing more than, I Googled it and it's 120 quid a foot, or an agent says you can do anything for 130 quid a foot.
Yeah.
But, that's the business case that goes to board. That's what gets signed off. And then when you and I pick up a project, that's the budget. Yep. And day one, we'll come on board and do a cost model. Budget's wrong.
Yep.
And that starts a whole trajectory of project-related issues, from value engineering on day one, reducing staff morale or team morale. Yeah. It means that, and it happens more with junior QSs, and it shouldn't be the case. If they know there's no budget, well, then they take a much firmer line with contractors, sometimes unfairly.
Absolutely.
Which can have a knock-on impact to supply chain insolvencies. And all of that mess and issues could actually be pinned back to the wrong business case a year, 2 years ago. And it's about, and I don't think it's done deliberately, it's a lack of knowledge. Yeah. But, that it's having the understanding that there's people out in the market, cost consultants, and not just me, any cost consultant in the London market would happily provide some free pro bono support at that point in time there to ensure that the robust budget is set up. And that, for me, if I can help that with content, with podcasts, with free resources, that's where I can make a huge impact in the market. Yeah, and kind of see those positive ripples run out through projects. So that's my plan. But it's all back to strategy, as you said.
It really is. It really is. But the desire's got to be there as well. So, I mean, we all love a collaboration post and podcast, and some people talk about emotional intelligence as well. And I'm not going to pretend to be some emotionally intelligent guru at all. But I did study emotional intelligence for my thesis, from a master's. And I do pride myself on not being perfect at implementing everything, absolutely not. But understanding the bigger picture and what's driving people's thoughts and emotions. I do pride myself on that, certainly to a point. Absolutely with my clients. I can sense a client's thoughts and emotions and feelings without anyone else in the room even noticing. And I'm pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. And I'll hone in on what the pain points, are really there for my client. And again, coming back to that strategic level, a lot of people in our industry forget what we're actually there to do. It's to give advice to a client that either doesn't know any better or they're too busy to do it themselves.
Or worst case, thinks they know better.
Well, that's
you're there to, but that's where the experience and confidence has to come in to be able to stand firm and ensure that you can give that robust advice. Whether they take it or not is another issue.
Yeah, and that's also very, very common, and I've got a recent example of that. But we're not just there to go get handed whatever we're handed and then go and deliver it, right? Tick some boxes, do some minutes, all right? Well, they're not. But we absolutely understand our client's bigger picture, and I certainly, in the Spark way, is to bring the project team back to that common goal as often as we can, or as often as we need to, and remind the team, actually, our landlord or developer client is doing this massive investment to get a product that they can get return on. This occupier is relocating for financial reasons, for real estate reasons, part of their bigger strategy, but also because they've got staff that need to do a job. They've actually got day jobs, right? And it's sometimes lost on people.
They just get, it's just a project, it's just a process.
Yeah, it's just a build. People call it a build or a job. It's a project that actually really matters to somebody and something. And we should all try to at least be mindful of that. But that's where Spark come in, is that kind of leader. We are the leader, and we really pride ourselves on being the leader. You can be
just to take that further, because whilst I'm thinking about it, it's understanding what the client wants. Absolutely. Yeah. I find just sitting around a project table, and maybe it's because consultants are constantly having their fees compressed, but they're very siloed in the sense of, this is what I need to achieve for my discipline, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is my fee, almost at the detriment of everybody else around the table. And I think it's kind of your role as kind of the leader of that team to improve that, and I call it trust and empathy among stakeholders, so that the architect knows what's important to me as the cost manager. I know what's important to the architect, to the client, to the services engineer, and I go out of my way to help them succeed. And I think that if we can get to the point when you get a team around a table, and everybody else is almost as concerned with helping everybody else succeed, amazing things get unlocked. That's where everybody trusts each other. No one's afraid to put up their hand and ask a stupid question. And that's when you innovate. And that's when you stop running bog standard fit out projects. That's when the team have the confidence to do something crazy in pursuit of a goal that they know the client has. And that's different.
Yeah, really does. Absolutely. And I think that stall has got to be set out at the start. And not to keep coming back to this, but as I say, sometimes I'm misunderstood because of that very thing. The amount of times that we present a scheme back to the contractor, we've just won, right? We're going to present the scheme back to you. Here's why. Here's the bit of the history. Here's the background. Here's why it's important.
You've just seen the drawings and the specs, and you've priced it. That's great.
Yeah.
But here's why.
Absolutely. And again, not to go back to everyone talks about collaboration, and let's be honest, there's a ton of amazing fluffy LinkedIn posts about collaboration, this and the next thing, and I believe it. I want it. I genuinely believe it. But you need to be collaborative within the boundaries of what's required, and somebody's got to lead that process. Because if everyone's just thinking about getting along and not upsetting everyone else, you're actually not doing well by the client or the end product. And again, this is where it all comes back to my background and my approach. Sometimes you need to be robust, and there's probably a handful of people out there that I wouldn't be on the Christmas card list, because we started off collaborative, we laid our stall out, and eventually, somewhere along the line, the wheels fall off, and you've got to be frank, and you've got to be robust, and you've got to kind of say it how it is sometimes. And that's me. I am as open, tactful, collaborative as anyone is willing to kind of work with. But I've got levels and I've got layers, and you kind of cross them a little bit, and I'll pull you back. Keep crossing them, or just take a run and jump over them. Then I'll have to take a different approach. And it's not for everyone. And the reason it's not for everyone, going back to trying to join a few dots here, Steve, is again because of the experience and the age and the generation we're in. And dare I say, it's amazing how quickly some people can get offended when it suits them.
100%.
And you're like, wait a minute.
Can't say anything these days.
No,
I have to remember, because obviously this does go out on the air, and I'm very outspoken. And part of me is kind of like, and I think, and I say this to guests when they come on. Quite often, guests come on and they want to say something that pleases everybody.
Yeah.
And what that means is what they say is thoroughly uninteresting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd far rather people, myself included, spoke their mind, which will mean some people don't like me, but some people love me.
Yeah.
And I want to work with the clients and the teams and the individuals and the stakeholders that love me, love what we do, love what we stand for, love how we operate.
Yeah.
As opposed to working with the teams that that don't, and that's great. And then you can go and work with the big corporates, and that's fine. And there's nothing against that. We're just different people, and we operate in different ways.
100%, 100%. And yeah, so I don't know. Some people would say I'm a bit Marmite, but it's because I hold true to myself for that exact reason. But then if you're a contracts manager for a contractor that said all this amazing, brilliant stuff in a tender interview, and we chose you for that, and you're probably on 100+K, and you're not doing what you said you were going to, and you're being a bit lax and blasé about it, blah blah, and forgetting the client's paying a lot of money sat around that project table, a hell of a lot. Why are you surprised that the project manager's going to
hold you to account?
Well, I'd start encouraging. Let's go for a coffee. Can we have a chat? And then eventually, when you still don't get anywhere, why are you surprised that the project manager's now more pissed off? I don't get it. But yeah, some people are just kind of keen to keep people happy and go to the next VCO and have a great time, and that's up to them. I love all that, but I love to know that I've done right by my client and I've done my best for that day.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's really important.
So talk to me about the plans for Spark. So we're about 4 years in, I think, roughly.
Yeah, just over 4 years.
If I said kind of and actually we can tie this in with kind of success generally, but where would you like to see the business go and grow to, if at all? Mm-hmm. And then I think a nice way to finish would be talking to us about what you view success as, both personally and from a business perspective. Give it another 20 years. What would you like to look back and see that you've done, that you've achieved? Because 9 times out of 10, I bet it isn't money, as most people kind of think it is. Well, you kind of think it is up to the age of about 25, 26. Yeah. And after that, you realise it's not. So yes, if we could talk about that, I think that would be a really nice way to close out the episode.
Sure. So Spark has recently gone through a rebrand to Spark Collective. And the reason we went from Spark PM to Spark Collective was because we want to catch more, we call it pain points, across our service lines. So the project management bit, the PM bit, and everyone knows me for being a PM, is the, let's call it the bread and butter. And and I don't mean it in a, to say it's the easy bit, but it's 20 years worth of career that I've got, right? And that's the pool that I play in when it comes to competition and pitching and all that kind of stuff. But the reason we rebrand to the collective is there's far more to a project than that. And it comes back to what we've already touched on, is a strategy-led approach. So where we want to reposition ourselves is not as the PM in speech marks. We're actually project strategists and managers. We can be anyone's project manager, and no doubt our next project will be, right, last minute, I'm in trouble, I need a project manager.
There's no time, there's no budget. Let's go D&B.
Yeah, exactly that. So we will absolutely do that. But where we want to reposition ourselves as project strategists first, because the experience and the value and the guiding principles that we've got, which is our direction, momentum, and energy, it's all about strategy. And we kind of touched on it earlier. It's not deliberate. Sometimes it is actually deliberate, to be fair. That some clients, why would I spend a couple of weeks or a couple of thousand over there early? Why would I think about all that stuff?
Why would I spend 10 grand to de-risk a £20 million fit out?
You nailed it. You nailed it, right? So we want to kind of bring that back to the market, that value back to the market, and make a difference at that level. So we are repositioning ourselves as strategists and managers. These days, if you've got anything about you in terms of desire as a client, you can't ignore ESG and technology these days. You just shouldn't. And ESG technology have got close links just by their very nature. So they should absolutely be part of a well-considered strategy. Now, all of that is scalable, because if you're going to do a 10,000 square feet cat A to B, right, okay, you don't need loads and loads of this, but at least let's sit down for an hour and just think about it. Just even if we're just challenging ourselves, questions.
Even if it's to just discount it.
Exactly.
From the goals and the drivers and the beliefs of the client.
100%.
But it's about asking those questions far earlier in the process.
100%. So it's completely scalable. It could be that, 1 hour coffee, or we're hopefully soon to be appointed on quite a substantial strategy piece for an existing client, which would be a redevelopment of an entire building. What do we do with it? When do we do it? How does it all work? So we've got to think about the leasing.
More importantly, why are we doing it?
Why are we doing it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that piece of strategy could take 3 months, 4 months, right? And it's a project in itself, in actual fact, that strategy piece. So and everything in between. So that's where we're repositioning ourselves. Strategist first, strategy led, being really humble and real about what we do. Right? We can, and I can, go and be a corporate guy. If I was to go and pitch tomorrow to the head of a law firm or something like that, I've got some amazing suits and pocket squares that I've hardly worn since pre-COVID. All right, I can go and be that guy, but I actually just want to always keep our Spark identity and my individual personality here and my team's personality there to really to care. We really care. I'm really sharing here now, Steve. So
dig deep, Vince. Dig deep.
So over the course of the last year, and we've just finished our accounts, I got a bit complacent. I put too many eggs in one basket with a client, and it's got to the end of that journey and not worked out well, if I'm honest, from a financial perspective. And we got complacent because we care too much about a particular client and their drivers and their motivations, and we got caught up in it. And I wasn't out there looking for the new opportunities or diversifying as much as I should have done. So, yeah, it's been a rough kind of 12, 18 months. I had some personal stuff going on as well, which knocked me a little bit. And we've rebranded, repositioned, and we're just so keen to be ourselves, authentic, where we can be and most intelligent, and just really deliver great things. So that's where we want to be. In terms of growth, this keeps me awake at night, as I'm sure it does you as well. What's the 5-year plan? What's the 2-year plan, frankly? I'd like to grow a little bit, but I don't see us, maybe going above 5, 8 people at most. But that's obviously market-driven, opportunity-driven, and it needs to feel natural. I know businesses that have started out, let's call them my competition, for want of a better phrase, albeit we're all kind of friendly and know each other, that maybe grew a little bit too big, and now they've got big overheads and big HR kind of things.
And junior staff.
And good luck to them, and I wish them all the success. So again, it comes back to my military strategy kind of mindset. Just take it a bit easier, be a bit more strategic in the outlook. Some people say that's slow and non-ambitious, but I'd just say it's measured and a bit more tactical in that sense. But we do want to grow. We want to go a bit wider on our services as well. So we use partners for our ESG and technology needs. Bring that in-house one day. That would be great. And I want to grow our talent service line as well, which we've not really touched on, which is outside of our professional services. But thinking about, more mentorship, more training, more education. Because, again, post-COVID, training and mentorship and one-to-ones are not as prevalent as they once were. We've got people are getting younger. Are they getting the guidance and expertise that they really need or exposure to it? I don't think they are. Add to that the AI layer. Where are we going to be in 5 years if everyone's getting younger, less experienced, and AI is doing more of the work?
You said earlier, this is another episode, but we're going to have a marketplace full of people that have a huge amount of knowledge, supported with no experience. And that's an issue. That you're going to have a lot of people in a meeting room sounding like they know what they're talking about, but that book read or ChatGPT-led knowledge, not learned on the job. And that's a problem fundamentally. And I think it's and maybe it's a problem that falls more on the project manager's shoulders to kind of spot that behaviour and ensure that it doesn't happen. But it's a cultural issue that an industry we're going to need to help navigate over the coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Definitely. And it's funny, not to go back too far, but we spoke about people's motivations around the table. I've been lucky enough to mentor a few people, and every time I mentor someone, certainly if they're new to the industry, come to a project meeting and just write down everything about who's around the table, try and figure it out, who's the architect and who's the client, and just, if they've never been there before, try and figure it out. Treat it like a game. Try and figure it out, and then try and figure out what's motivating them and why they said what they said. You don't need to know about how many linear meters of partition we've got. You don't worry about that. All that will come. Try and figure out the people aspect first and the motivations. And that's kind of lesson number one. And I've been mentoring a couple of people. I still mentor a couple of people now. And I think you learn project management by doing project management. And it's real, it's human, it's tangible. You can go and be at that meeting. You could go and shake that person's hand. You can go for a coffee with that person. It's real. It's not behind this screen. It's just not. So anyway, there's my kind of lesson number one of project management, the Vince Simpson school. But that's why I wanted to get into talent a little bit more. I've got a real worry about it, and where we're going to be here.
So then, just then to close us out. So let's fast forward 20 years, 25 years. What do you want to have achieved? What do you want to look back on and think, yeah, I did that well. How do you want to steer your ship for the next 20 years to ensure you end up at a destination that you feel that you've done yourself, I'd say done yourself proud, but that you've lived a life that you're happy with?
Yeah. There's a couple of layers to that, I guess. A really practical layer. I want to improve the industry at every touch point. And what I mean by that is, if I've got a client that's never done this before, never embarked on a project before, get to the end of that project and they'll have learned a lot about why we go about things a certain way. And on the next project, they'll be better. Yeah.
Positive ripples, I call it.
Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it. Positive ripples. And that goes right down to the project manager from a contractor's perspective. Here's another little anecdote. I love an anecdote, Steve. I was on site probably, 6 months ago, and we were in the final throes of a completion, or a phase, I should say. And the site was a mess. They were trying their best to be everywhere at all points in time, but it wasn't controlled. And we had to just take a breath. And I spoke to the leader on that project about site culture. If you don't understand what your own site culture is and how you're treating and looking after your own site, no one else is going to give it that. The operatives will not care. And it's just going to be chaos. And there's no sequence plan, there's no phasing, there's no,
There's no pride in the site.
No pride. You're not checking up on them. All you're doing is issuing snag lists to an email address. Where's the human bit? And honestly, I got a blank look. And I was just amazed by this. So I want to improve at every little touch point I can. I'm not going to change the world. I know I'm not.
But it's all right. It's all right to try. Positive ripples is a big thing for me, because I think, I want to get to the end of my career and know that, I've left the industry in a better place than it was when I started.
Yeah.
And, and that for me is kind of a vision where every client, because of the high levels of trust across the industry, defaults to a negotiated procurement route with contractors that they know, like, and trust, because that's the way that it should be done.
Yeah.
We only default to contract amendments, risk apportionment, two-stage, single-stage tendering, because there's a lack of trust.
Yeah.
If we can re-gear that to ultimate levels of trust, that's where amazing things can happen. Now, look, I know that's never going to happen, but if I can work and help just a fraction towards that, then I'm happy. That for me is success. I've done a good thing. I feel filled up inside accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So that kind of improve along the way, and it's at different levels again. It's at a strategic level. Picking up on your point, actually, the default is to amend every third-party document we can. Existing structure, responsibility. Throw it all on the contractor. Doesn't make it right. And the smarter ones, who are getting smarter, will push back. So what you've now created is a frictious environment rather than a collaborative one, right? Balance, proportion. So all of that really matters. But then at a personal level, I don't think I'm ever going to be rich with Spark. Steve.
Wrong industry, and the same for us.
Yeah.
It's and if you were that way inclined, you'd be, depending on how academic you were, but you'd be an investment banker, or it's I always say we work too hard, especially you and I, in the weeds of a project because we care.
Yeah.
Which means there's a finite amount of projects that we can have control over.
Definitely.
Which means ultimately there's a cap on earning potential. Now, don't get me wrong. You, I, we do okay.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's unless you want to scale a business.
Yeah.
And then that goes against all of the stuff that we've just spoken about.
Yeah, it just gets harder to not control, but manage, oversee, and keep the identity and the culture that you want. And we overgive. As I just shared, the course of the last 12 months with a particular client, we gave and gave and gave, and made no profit out of it at all. That's my fault. I took my eye off the ball there.
That's right. So you're a registered charity now as well.
Yeah. I won't go down that route. Yeah. But yeah, we overgive and we care, and we want to stand out as being those guys in a nutshell. Is that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I would love to have a legacy that someone else and a new team kind of go and take forward. I am not. I've got no grand illusions of me sitting on a beach somewhere sipping pina colada just for the sake of it. Yeah, and then I'd love to kind of maybe continue my journey with another 10, 15 years experience on me and give a different kind of support to the industry in terms of non-exec work, or being on a board somewhere or some kind of advisory role. I'd love to do something like that perhaps one day.
I mean, I think there's a place. There's a load of startups in our space. It used to be that a niche director-led cost consultancy was a USP. They're everywhere now, but I do feel that there's a lot of very competent, experienced guys setting up very young businesses that could benefit from having that decade's worth of experience as a non-exec, as a silent advisor, as in to help navigate the problems that I've already overcome. And back to a strategy piece. How you build that culture within a growing business to ensure that you become the business that you want to become, the reason you launched it. Because I think a lot lose sight of that as they grow in scale, turnover. They're on the treadmill, chasing fees, and you're back to doing what you didn't want to be doing.
Exactly. So it's about taking that breath sometimes and just looking in the mirror and going, why do I do that? And I do a lot of reflection, a hell of a lot. Again, whilst some people may say I'm a bit Marmite, and it's a small number of people, I will say, I reflect on those situations regularly, and I'm still very confident that it was the right approach at the right time for the right reasons. Sure. But I just hope somewhere along the line, I and other people learn from those little kind of interactions and how to move forward. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a lovely place to put a pin in it. Okay. Listen, Vince, that's been a very, very quick hour and a half. That's flown by.
Yeah.
Lots of ground covered, and I've really enjoyed it. I think it would be great to get you back on next year. There's loads of stuff that we've only scratched the surface on.
Yeah.
I mean, AI is a biggie. I mean, maybe we can talk offline about doing something around that. Because to be fair, AI is in the back of my mind. It's about how I can launch AI tools to support cost consultants in their role. Yeah. But again, it comes back to that knowledge and experience point that we talk about. What we don't want to do is empower a load of cost consultants with tools that might not actually make a positive difference to the world. Might make their life easier, but might not make a positive difference. So that's a conversation for another day. But look, thoroughly enjoyed that, and hopefully everybody listening has as well. If anybody does want to reach out, that kind of buys into your approach, your style, what's important to you, then look, you can do. You're on LinkedIn. I'll put the link in the description. If not, it's spark-collective.com. But look, Vince, thanks ever so much for coming on. We'll catch up again soon.
Fantastic. Look forward to it. Thanks, Steve. Cheers.
If you have an office project on the horizon and will be preparing a budget for board approval, head to my website, www.steveberridge.com, where I have a collection of resources to help you formulate a robust project budget and give your project the best chance of being a success. Thanks.